It's the most wonderful time of the week. It is Avatar Day. I think last day I did on Friday. That's okay. Whatever day of the week I do Avatar is the best day of the week. So you might have watched the pilot episodes thinking, oh, this is just a show with incredible animation and detailed martial arts and a character-driven story that's exploring world building, but it's not going to make you bawl your eyes out. And that's where you're wrong. This is the third episode of Book 1 Water, and this is where, whenever I restart the series, this is where I begin, because this is kind of how the format of the show is going to be. It's traveling, and you get more of the sense that Zuko's the antagonist, but it's more of a dual storyline. This is where you meet the main antagonist of Book 1, which is General Zhao. Commander Zhao, I think he even said that he got upgraded to Commander. I am a big fan of Commander Zhao. He has an incredible voice actor. There's a really good podcast that I should link down below. They changed their name, but they're one of the biggest Avatar podcasts out there on iTunes. The host would always talk about how much he loved Commander Zhao and how he was his favorite villain. And you can see just the way he talks. He said this great line when he met Zuko where he's like, "You'll have to tell me all about it." Where he just extends the words out, but you can hear the bit of the grin, the smirk he has when he says it. So good. And just the scene, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit because there's a lot to get to. So the scene where you are spending more time with Zuko. Book 1 Zuko is so fire to me. Fire. He is so fine. And I know people are like, oh, you Book 1 Zuko, but I love me some Book 1 Zuko. Anyway, so when Zuko pulls in his ship, and it's funny because you see I was talking about scale in the pilot episodes and how that ship just took up the entire screen and how massive it was, especially against the Southern Water Tribe. And he comes in and he's just dwarfed by all the other official Fire Navy ships. And it's just so interesting to see truly how advanced the Fire Nation is, even just compared to Zuko. And you get a kind of a good sense of their culture when you switch over to his side. You see more of his uncle. Uncle Iroh, obviously standout character, and you get this is I think the first time it's mentioned that the uncle is the Fire Lord's brother, and that Zuko is in fact a banished prince. I think all that is said in this episode and not the pilot episode, so you kind of get a little bit of backstory in there. You get the sense that Iroh definitely cares about Zuko, definitely understands that Zuko's kind of hot-headed, but he's respectful to Zhao even when Zuko doesn't want to be. He has tea with Zhao even when Zuko just wants to walk away in a huff, which might have been for the best. But and then after the Agni Kai, when he again, skipping around a lot. The Agni Kai is just super cool, and I don't think you get a sense yet of what the purpose of it is, except that when there's a form of disrespect, it's like a formal way to go about that aggression, which says something about the Fire Nation for sure, that they kind of have their own space and setting for these disagreements. Maybe it's a more formal way to go about it. The last time Zuko had an Agni Kai, I think it's suggested that the last time he had one is when he got the scar on his face, which is really interesting. He's a banished prince. You get why it's so important for him to capture the Avatar and why he was even set out on that mission in the first place. And that he's been gone for 2 years, and that he thinks he'll come home with open arms to his father. And Zhao's like, don't you think if he really wanted you home, he would have had you home a long time ago? And you can see that all of this kind of hurts Zuko, but he has a lot of pride, so he keeps it in he doesn't keep it in. He shows it through anger, and that's how it gets to the Agni Kai. But there's this great line. If you want to hear Zuko's voice acting at his best, he and Zhao are having a back and forth, and Zhao says something about, "Didn't that scar teach you a lesson?" And he turns to Zhao, and he gets really angry, and he gets up in his face, and he's like, "Maybe you want one to match." Great line. So then if we switch over to Aang and Katara and Sokka, they make it to the Southern Air Temple. This is why I think when you're rewatching the series, this kind of feels like when it starts, because you really get a sense of how the show is going to act the rest of the way, and that they're traveling, they're going to new locations, they're exploring new things, and there's flashbacks, and it's really heartbreaking. And what I really love about the show is, yes, they have their funny moments with the air sport, the air ball, the air. Sokka gets kicked around a little bit, and they chase after Momo, and they have their funny moments. But it's really heartbreaking, just the concept of the show. And it's in the title, The Last Airbender, but I don't even think the audience really understands what that means until this episode, when Aang is going back to his main temple. And this is never really explained in the show, it's like on their Wikipedia. But the air temples are split up, so north and south are the male temples, and then east and west are the female temples, which is why in his flashbacks it's all dudes. That's where they're raised, and that they get their tattoos, which I love. I love that the show is so pro-tattoo. Tattoos are a sign of pride. This is also something that's not said in the show ever, but you only get the arrow tattoos. You notice that Aang has it, but also these other monks, when you are a certified master at airbending. So it shows just how incredibly advanced Aang is, even in his flashback. The whole crux of the episode is Aang still thinks there's hope, that there's other airbenders out there, because you can't get to an air temple without an air bison, and there's no way the Fire Nation had air bison, and it's been 100 years, there's probably still some here, and it's completely abandoned. And then when he finds Monk Gyatso's skeleton, it's like, oh, not only are all the airbenders actually gone, but they're dead. And not only are they dead, they were brutally murdered. And because of his existence, because of the Avatar's existence, that's why his entire people are decimated. He's the only one who can also, as Zhao said, the Avatar is the only one that can stop the Fire Nation from fulfilling their victory. They talk about the reincarnation of the Avatars, which this series, I've been with it so long and it's so ingrained that I wonder if new viewers in this episode, if they really grasp the Avatar state at this point. I wish I could just wipe it from my memory so I can go and rewatch it and be like, oh, this is what I think the Avatar state means. But it's like, oh, I know what the Avatar state means. I know how the Avatar works. But this is such a visually interesting way to get this complicated idea across. The reincarnation and reincarnation into these different elements and different nations, and there's a very specific cycle, and there's past lives, and he kind of knows them but he doesn't, and they're somehow wrapped into the Avatar state. And so you must think that the Fire Nation 100 years ago, after the last Avatar died and they knew it was going to be reincarnated into the air nomad society, that they would be like, oh, it's been 12 years, so this Avatar is roughly 12 years old, so the Fire Nation would focus their violence and their attacks especially on the children. And that's just so, it's such a heavy show, and it presents it in a digestible way. Even Monk Gyatso and his skeleton, which is kind of disturbing, but it's not like there's a lot of blood and guts or you're seeing the actual murders on screen. It's just, it's been such a long time, everything's just gone, there's no air nomads left, you're literally the last one, and you just have to you conceptualize it yourself. And when Aang sees his skeleton and just breaks down, it's just, that's always a hard moment for me. I just can't imagine being that young and having to deal with something that difficult and terrifying, and just kind of the harsh realities of the world, that he's such a fun and go-lucky kid. He's oriented in such a positive direction, and to just be like, oh no, there not only is there cruelness and evil in the world, it has directly caused like the misery in your own nation and your own people. Just the fact that someone he loved had to die in such a brutal way, it's heartbreaking. And Katara's line of you still have a family, we're your family now, is really moving. Maybe comes a little soon because it's only the 3rd episode, but it's like, it's the Avatar, so it's like, really, are you not going to have the Avatar involved in your life at this point? You think it ends, or it's going to end with them naming Momo and having the new lemur and Appa and kind of like having their laugh together when Momo takes Sokka's food and being like, ah. But it ends with their beautiful little jingle, which I love so much. They're do 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 do, and he's watching his home disappear in the fog. So visually symbolic of, you know, that part of his life does have to end. It is in the past, and there's no going back to the way it used to be, and everything after this is just going to be so new and so different. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I hope you like this, guys. Let me know if you have any thoughts or your opinions on this episode or the show in general in the comments below. And I'm so excited for next week. We have the Kyoshi Warriors. Whoop, whoop. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.